can carry on. I've got a bolt at 8.
And we are live tonight with a book and a beverage with the automaton known as E L Montague.
Yes, hello.
Or clone. We're not sure. So how many live streams are you currently on now, EL?
How many times am I live streaming myself? I just have one.
No, I mean currently, how many different live streams are you on? Because you're on every single live stream that I go to. So I'm assuming that you're on 3 or 4 at a time.
No, that just shows you and I have a small circle. You were going to read Becoming a Druid, were you, Tim? So that's so for everybody that's watching, Tim, I know you're there to comment, but for everybody that's watching, feel free to heckle these guys about their books, because one of the things that I took as my task being here is there's a Rangers deck on the wall back there, and there's Becoming a Druid over here, and I've read these guys' books so that I can hassle them as much as they can hassle me. I'm going to confess, Ro, I'm only halfway through Rangers deck. I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with Miragorn. I'm going to ask you all about how you can get a giant dragon out of a single man, but we'll go from there.
He's very small. He turns into a very small black dragon.
Is the very small black dragon larger than
the mass of a man?
Than a man?
Well, the mass is different, but magic. Fuck you.
So I asked this because in one of the series that I've written, so I've got 3 series that has collections of stories in them, and then I've also got like horror stories that are kind of standalone and thrillers that are standalone. But the 3 series, I've got the Nero series, which is the collection of shorts that you've read, and there's novels that go with that too, that eventually will see the light of day. I've got the Temra, which is a fantasy series, and with that one, that's where I've got the novels written. But I also have collections of short stories for that'll be coming out, and then I have Seaward, which is about the Seaward Island wolves. And for my wolves, this question came up for me a lot, and I made it conservation of mass. So if you have a 100-pound female, you have a 100-pound dog. If you have a 250-pound man, you have a 250-pound wolf, because of conservation of mass.
Yeah, I considered that.
But that would have made a really small dragon.
Right, exactly. But he is, as dragons go, he is very small. When he is in dragon form, he does eat like a dragon.
So I've always been curious about that. You are obviously a monumental sized dragon guy. But are you like an earth ending? So like on the John Gwynn book, the cover with the dragon that's the size of the mountain, is that what your belief on dragons is, or are they more mortal?
So giving away something in my very first book, this one here.
The one with the 7-fingered hand.
Magic Genesis, yeah. Dragons in this world were created originally from people. Okay, because it's a mundane world for the first 2 chapters, and then magic comes into it very suddenly, and people have to figure it out. Right, 2 people.
So Sapper in Hand isn't the first book,
right? Oh no, that's the first book of the 2nd series. So there's 6 books first, and then it's in the same world. Anyway, so dragons, a proper dragon, of which there are no more, those original dragons, were quite large, but they weren't like, earth-shattering large kind of dragons. They were honking big, right?
Right.
But Miragorn is probably more akin to a horse.
All right, I can take that. So like a large crocodilian size, not like one of the 20-footers even, but like one of the 12, 14-footers.
Yeah, I mean, he's big enough where you'd wet yourself, right? I mean, it's a fucking dragon. So,
having looked face to face at a 6-foot alligator, I would have wet myself long before horse size.
So there you go.
There you go.
Okay, so right. We have important questions. We have to get to this But before we do, what does EL stand for?
Edward. It's all my name, Edward Montague Lang. So E L Montague, and then I also write under E L Montague, which is just Montague in a different language, and then or L E Montague, and then I also write under L Edwards. So it's several names, but they're all just twisting around my three names.
And how many books have you written?
You might not want to write. You might not want to write under Edward Lang.
I don't want to write under Edward Lang. If I do that, it'll be nonfiction.
Well, no, you probably don't want to anyway. If you do a Google search on Edward Lang, he was either charged or convicted of conspiracy with the January 6 riots.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe you do, right? Maybe that'll help your SEO.
Maybe. I don't know. I didn't know that. But no, so that's my name, and I just have got it mixed around. So for instance, I have the one that ends Edwards. I write thrillers, and they really don't work with the science fiction and fantasy. Now, the science fiction and fantasy, I think I'm going to do those both under E L Montague. So to your question, I have not published any of my novels, but I have 7 completed novels that just need attention. Hello, William Long and Tim McKay.
You have 7 books that you finished and haven't done anything with?
Say again?
You have 7 books you finished and haven't done anything with?
Yeah, I was kind of a chicken for a bit. It's one. So there's a few things that make you a writer. First, you have to have the stories that are just crawling around in your head that you've got that you want to tell. Second, you have to have the fortitude to sit down at the keyboard and bang them out. Then third, you've got to have the courage to sit down with it, let somebody else look at it, and discover that you really suck and you have to work at it, getting it better. Then you have to have the courage to let it get out in the public. Those are all things that have to happen. And, in my flow, I have had enough courage to put out short stories, but not enough courage to publish novels.
Were you one of those kids who, like Halloween, you would leave your candy by your bedside and just not eat it?
No.
I can't imagine having a stack of books finished and just say, "Oh, that's right, I'll get to publishing those later."
Well, I'm still learning how. So this book, the reason I published it was to learn how to publish a book. I will publish the novels, but I thought that it was a nice, safe way to start to do the collection of short stories. It'd teach me how to assemble it and how to do the formatting and how to get it out there and deal with, disappointment about only selling a handful. And, that's what I assumed. Now, for all of you out there who have read my stories, thank you very much. I can't even tell you how much of a giggle it is when you look into your KDP and somebody's picked up your book and started reading, and you can totally tell. I mean, I know you guys have got yours out there, but you can totally tell when you see it. You're like, oh, somebody just picked it up. And then you wait and you see if they read it again the next day, and you're like, oh, I didn't lose them. It's a lot of fun. So
you're like, oh, no page reads. Uh-oh. And then the next day you have like 100 and you're like, oh, okay, something must have happened.
What I hate is when somebody reads like 2 pages, and 2 pages on an ebook is like a page, right?
Right.
It's probably less than a page. They may have made it through the first 2 paragraphs. And then you don't, like, days will go by and you won't. It's like, come on. It's like, what can you tell after 2 paragraphs? Seriously.
You can tell some. You can tell style of writing. I've got this one over here. It's over there somewhere. But Dr. Strange and Mr. Norrell, Dr. Strange, whatever. Very Jane Eyre, and I just didn't like it. It's supposed to be a really good book. I couldn't get into, Pride and Prejudice and all that stuff. They're really well told stories, but just not my style. Just like somebody on here thinks Ernest Hemingway is not a genius, but
trash. That's me.
Yeah, I understood who I was commenting about.
All right.
I happen to think that Ernest Hemingway is the stuff. I really liked him. You know, in the whole Ernest Hemingway or George Steinbeck, it's Ernest Hemingway for me.
A lot of people do, and that's and it kind of goes back to what you were saying before, right? Is you wanted to really learn about this before you put your books out there, and you're going to have the courage to have people hate them and blah blah blah.
Right.
People are going to hate your books regardless of how good they are. There's going to be somebody that hates it, right?
Yeah.
There's probably going to be a lot of people that hate it. Your job with
so I also, one of the things that I learned is, if you'll notice that one's, let me see, there we go. It's in Spanish. One of the things that I did is I had it translated so that I could learn how to do that. And this is just the author copy, because one of the feedbacks I got after I published the ebook was that there were some mistakes. And so I contacted the person who had said it, and they pointed out. So I got a post edit done on the book, and I'm fixing it. So I'm making some updates. But out of that, I got a review, and the person said it was basically a pretty positive review of the book. And it said, but he seems to really like boobs. And I showed my wife that, and she was like, well, duh. She's like, yes, you do. So, okay. And that was the fun. Yeah. So like, if you go read the review is really quite positive. A little bit of comment on the choice of Spanish. And then at the end, it's like, other than the fact that he has a weird boob fetish, we're okay. It's not what I would have picked up out of the book, but my wife's observation on it was just, well, yeah, you do.
Even if I picked it out of the book.
I didn't hear all of that, Ro.
Yeah, you're frozen.
Even if I saw it, yeah, of course I am. Can you hear me now?
But at least you're smiling.
You are frozen, Ro, and you're clipping in and out, but Mike is fine.
See, I was
Good
still
evening,
moving.
John A. Douglas. Thank you for joining us for your drive home.
You know.
Right, you're moving now, Ro. Try it again.
I can hear me. I'm just saying, I don't think I would have put that in a review.
Oh, well, you know, whatever. I'm down with it. And, you know, just like I told your guy the other day, I'd take a DNF. You know, Andrew was on with Mike, and if somebody DNFs my book, say I DNF'd this book, and here's why. In part because sometimes when somebody says I DNF'd a book because, I look at the because and I'm like, awesome, I want to pick up that book.
Yeah.
So,
or as a writer, you can look at it and say, oh yeah, that makes sense. I could fix that.
Yeah, I get a little bit of that. Author fetishes coming out in their books are always entertaining. Take spanking in Wheel of Time.
Yeah, but full-school young virgins between the ages of 17 and 19. You must give us a good spanking.
Yeah. To that end, in terms of publishing, I published my first story in 1993, 2, something like that. And that was, what's funny is, to this day, it's the one that I sold for the most money. It was a short story about 2,500, 3,000 words, and I got paid $400 for it. Nice. And it was actually a little bit of a curse, because I got paid the $400. It was hugely encouraging, but at 20 whatever, I thought, oh, I know how to write. You know, right. I think I was either 20 or 21. And so I thought, ooh, I know how to write. And it actually hurt my progress for a little bit, because I didn't learn enough from it. It was very encouraging, but I didn't learn enough from it. And then kind of over the next 30 years, I've been published in anthologies and the occasional, I've sold a little bit, and I've done a little bit in publications. And what's crazy is, even stuff that I wrote 4 or 5 years ago, it's, man, I've grown a lot, and I encourage that for everybody out there who writes. Whatever you did yesterday is nothing compared to what you did today. You just get better and better. It's humbling.
That's the theory, anyway.
Actually, you can see it in the way that other people write. Sometimes you'll see authors lose their inspiration. They're technically better, but you just didn't have the fire. But I think we all get better.
Yeah,
I know Mike got better. Have you read his books?
I've read all of Mike's books several times.
Several times, and they get better as they go. I mean, they
do because I fixed them.
Ro takes credit for Mike's success.
Hey, what Ro had to read was cruel.
It's not that bad, actually, Mike.
I find we all think it's awful until we get to know it, and then it's not as bad as we thought. So tell me this, Mike, how come you stuck a 0.5 book in the middle of your Pratani series that wasn't on Grammy's line?
So what I did, the whole reason I wrote the series was I was going to write a series about druids, and I saw a post on the internet, so it had to be true, saying that people who are the personality type INTJ cannot be heroes, and they went on the list. But famous, people in entertainment who were INTJ are Voldemort, Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes,
right?
Magneto, and my personal favorite, Hannibal Lecter. And they're like,
I love Hannibal Lecter. He's a really
they make great villains, but they cannot be heroes. And I was like, I'm an INTJ. I'm going to make an INTJ be the hero. So I wrote book 1. I wrote what is now book 3. And then I was like, okay, so Grammy's going to start going to throne rooms and getting kings upset if we're going to have this titanic battle at the end of the series. And I'm like, okay, so we need to do this. And he's like, no, I'm going to hang out in the forest and talk to squirrels, maybe turn into an owl. And I'm like, but I need you to. And he's like, no, that's not me. And so I was like, because it's going to be a 4-book series. And I was like, well, I need to move the narrative along, and he's not going to help me. So that, therefore, originally it was 1.5 came out, which was 2 novellas.
Right.
And I'd also, one person very early on, like within the first couple months of me writing the book, complained that I did not explain how the mind controlling magic worked. And I gave like 0. I'm like, well, the bad guy's trying to kill him. He's not going to sit down. Let me explain how my magic works to you. When you write first person present tense, you got some limitations there. So
right.
I was like, fine, I'm going to write 2 people who have that, and then they can at least kind of understand that sort of magic, and then we'll move on. And then after I launched it, I realized that Amazon will not let you put that in the Protectors of Pratani series as 1.5 because they don't do decimals, and honestly, why would they? So no one read Sins and Sorrows for an entire year because it said I had book 1 and book 2, and then there's this other book that may or may not. So I was like,
so that's what got me, is I actually read book 1, book 3, and then I don't know where I saw it, but somewhere I saw it, and I was like, well, crap, I'm out of order. And so
not really. That was the one order I wrote them in. So when I went and wrote Sins and Sorrows, I'm like, well, there are different characters that don't really intersect with book 2 at all, or the second book I wrote at all. So they don't really tie in except for at the very, very end when you find out that Queen ends up not just being a housewife her entire life. Yeah. But otherwise they're just independent stories. And then this last one I wrote, which is book 2.5, which is now book 4, that since I knew I was doing that ahead of time, I could have some tie-ins and whatnot. So yeah, I need to, once this book I'm writing now gets published in July, I'm going back and fixing all the covers. I'm fixing everything. So there'll be book 1, 2, 3, and 4 because I'm still selling books 1, 1.5, 2, and 4 on my table at Comic-Cons. So I'm like, no, don't turn the book over. Don't read the back cover.
Pay no attention to the
So how many books do you have, Mike?
I have 4 books out now. My sci-fi book is coming out next month because I'm also, I'm in the middle of a fantasy series. Let's write sci-fi.
Trust me, I do the same thing. So for me, one of the things that I do is, and that's actually the short stories that you've read some of. Those are stories where I'm figuring out characters in the books. So as I'm writing the books, I write backstories, and I kind of feel out the characters. And the way that I do that is I write stories, and I write relatively quickly. So it's pretty easy to knock out stories. I would say right now I've got, I don't know, 200 stories of 2,500 to 20,000 words, somewhere in there. Yeah. And then I've got the novels, which is maybe 1,000,000 words. So, and eventually, Ro, I am going to publish them. How many books have you got, Ro?
2 novellas and 9 novels.
9 novels. So 6 and 3. Which, by the way, guys, he's got the 3 most recent up there. They're in the same series, but the other 6 are those are old news.
Well, there's just not enough room on the shelf.
Well, when you're as productive as that, and you have to put your editor's credits up there too. I noticed that you got the Becoming a Druid up there, which, by the way, guys, so anybody who watches and who hasn't already picked up these guys' books, they're pretty good. If you like becoming animals, Mike likes your thing. Actually, they both want to become an animal. It's just one becomes real animals and the other one becomes mythical animals.
So because of that little commercial right there, I'm going to assume that you got the check that Mike sent you.
No, but I trust it's coming. I trust it's coming.
Yeah, just don't cash it. Just let it bounce.
Your Venmo again? Yeah.
Well, you guys have your own show. You've got your stuff on the wall. I figured that you ought to be able to get your word out. Yeah. So that's where it is. I think that I've got 73-ish thousand words of the next collection put together right now, and I've got 73 that are edited, and I've got 22 that need editing, and then I have to write 3 interludes. So $6,000. So it'll be about 100,000 words on that collection. I should get that out later this summer.
And that is
Mike, I sent you a teaser. Easy fix. Did you read that one?
So I read the email you sent last night. You said it's only 1,500 words. I'm like, oh, I'll read that right now before I go to bed. I'm like, he forgot a 0 in there. It is not 1,500 words.
So I sent you 2. I sent you Easy Fix, and then I sent you. Did I send you Gentleman's Virtue, or did I send you?
She got the kids.
Oh, she got the kids. Oh, that one. Yeah, that one's not $15,000. That's only 7,000 words.
Well, I was trying to read it at like 11:40 last night, and I'm like, nope, I'm going to bed.
All right. Well, that's from the new collection, so you have an idea of what it's like when I'm talking about humans. Yeah.
So it sounds like I'm harping on this, and maybe I am.
Okay.
But I think when like a lot of people start writing, and that first book takes a stupid amount of time.
It does. It takes so long.
But then when they get it done, they go, "Oh, that wasn't so bad," right? Because they haven't tried to actually sell it yet. But anyway,
right.
And then they just start cranking out whatever. What keeps you going when you write as much as you've written but haven't actually published it?
These are my stories, man.
Did your wife just lock you in there or something? It's like she slide your food in through a slot in the door. And
my wife would much rather I got out and took care of my honeydew. But no, I've got these stories just spinning in my head. And the thing that's really crazy about it is, so like right now, if we were to right now start thinking up a story, like if you were to say, let's write a story about, the Triptychus Brittlefang, I would start thinking of it. And I'd say, okay, so we got this 3-headed monster that lives in a cave, and, here are the things. And it would take me a couple of minutes to start down a path.
Mm-hmm. And
then once I do it, this whole world and all these stories start filling up my mind. And I can't let it go. If I don't write it down, it starts getting in the way of the rest of my life. And, so instead of thinking about writing sales proposals, I'm sitting there going, so why would anybody be in the cave? And so every day between 6 and 7 at night, or 7 and 8 at night, and very occasionally between 6 in the evening and 6 the next morning. Very occasionally, I'll start typing and I'll tell the story. I just bits and bobs today. Let me see. What did I write today? The Mechanic, it's only 858 words, but I'll finish more. And I wrote that in 2 to 5 minute snippets throughout the day.
Well, it's good then that you're probably getting rid of that, because sitting in a corner mumbling to yourself is very socially awkward.
It is. It is, especially when you're talking about, mythical creatures and crazy people and murderers. And my son has said, Dad, you're not capable of telling a story that doesn't involve a mobster and a prostitute. Let me see. I was sure to look up the definitions when JCM Byrne put out a call for short stories, and my submission was 7,300 words. He said he wanted 3,000. I'm with you, Daniel. I'm with you.
He's saying before 7,500 is a novelette, so 73 is a short story.
So I think that's right. Up to 7,500 is still considered short. Like 1,000 or so is flash. Flash fiction's hard, by the way. For those of you who've written it and do a good job of writing it, being brief that way is tough.
I used to have a Patreon page, and one of the things I did is every week I found a random line generator online, and I would just pull up a random line, and then I would write something about that, using that line, write a story, and I'd spend 60 minutes writing a story, and that was it. If it was finished, great, and if it wasn't finished, it wasn't finished.
There's nothing wrong with that. So one of the things, so I don't know how many of the people that are watching are writers. I think actually quite a few of them. But one of the things that was huge for me is I participated in an online community. It was on Absolute Right, but kind of like a writing group. And I put out a weekly practice session, and just, you write a practice story, 1,500, 2,000 words, something like that. And just the repetition, the getting used to writing something and finishing it, really taught me a lot about how to write. And so, just the repetition of tell a story helps to improve. And by doing it with a writing group, I don't know how many of you guys work in a writing group. I know you've had the break-ins on recently.
Yep.
The act of giving your story to somebody else and then having them shit all over it it's really good for the writer. And Ro's frozen for me again. I mean, Mike, you're fine, but Ro is frozen again.
Hey. He's alive.
He is alive. By the way, I talk, so you guys are welcome to interrogate me all you want. I will respond.
This makes interviews really easy when you just carry the load.
No snacks, so they're all gone. That's what it is I'm freezing up because the ghost in the machine here is used to kicking you out, but you're on screen here today.
It's fritzing.
So really know what to do.
Get rid of him.
Yep, it's that time. It's 7:30. Why is EL still here? What the hell? We'll just freeze this other guy instead.
Yeah.
He's not doing anything useful here.
So we should take questions from the commenters if we've got some out there.
Hey man, it's your show. Off you go. Let's do it.
Normally I'm here driving like 30 questions, 40 questions by now. But for you guys out there,
what would you ask yourself?
What would I ask myself?
Yeah.
Have I ever written a story without a mobster or a prostitute? Yes, I have.
So
not many, but several. Mike is particularly fond of one that I wrote about a mobster and all of his prostitutes. Actually, it was about the cop that saved him from the cops. But,
the Last Good Man, that needs to be a full-length novel. I need to know.
Well, don't you worry. Don't you worry. Our good detective is part of other stories.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, the baby in Terminate the Root is a character. That's the origin story for another character. Do you have names for your swords? You mean these?
Bert and Ernie.
So believe it or not, or okay. Oh, he's got his new sword. So for you, John, this sword, the longer of the two, is from Buffalo, and that one over there is from Springfield. And you can see kind of up in the corner here above my head, right there, a bunch of trophies. In my younger days, I was a Scottish Highland game athlete, so fat guys in skirts throwing trees, and these are trophies. So that was first place in the B class in Buffalo, and that one was first place in the B class in Springfield. And then I've got,
what?
Say again?
You got those for doing what?
Scottish Highland Games. So,
right. Cool. They give you a sword?
Throwing trees and rocks and stuff like that.
Tossing.
Yeah. It's basically a strongman competition.
Because a sword is like the coolest trophy ever.
They're pretty cool trophies.
And Mike won his by knowing how to log on to Amazon.
Oh, look at him with his claymore. Traditional claymore. There we go. And that one's actually the same basic pattern as that one.
Yep. And you know what this means, EL? Grommy has to go. I have more weapons to hang on the wall.
There we go. Although I really like Grammy. So that's all right with me. And why Grammy and why not Graham?
So when I was in college many, many moons ago, I had a Calculus 2 professor whose name was Grommy Fairweather, and he was Scottish. And I hated him, and I said, I'm going to play D&D. I'm going to name my cleric after him, and I'm going to have him killed. And I never played D&D. And then I started writing a story about Druid. I'm like, Grommy Fairweather, you could not have a better name for a Druid. And I was like, he was probably in his 60s when he taught me back in 1990, so I'm sure he's dead. So I'm just going to go with Grommy Fairweather. And then I wrote, and I spelled it Graeme, because I'm like, that's Grommy. Clearly, that's what his name was. And he was Scottish, so he said Grommy. And then my editor, before I met Roe, was like, that's Graham, right? I'm like, how the hell is that Graham? So then I was like, fine, I'm going to make it Grahme, Grahme. And people still say it's Graham all the time.
In all fairness, while I was practicing how to do an audiobook, I actually I have my own recording of your book through chapter 14, just as I was practicing, and it was Graham. So
yeah, well, and actually my first books that I put out, I changed it to Grommy everywhere. I scoured, made sure search and find. The one place I forgot to do it, back cover, very first word, misspelled my main character's name.
Nice.
So there's like 64 of those out there in the public. So, if I ever make it big, you can go, I knew him when he was an idiot. And they'll go, we all knew him when he was an idiot.
I mean, was.
Yeah.
All right.
So you bring up a good point there, EL. Not to get off Mike's Grommy kick, but what possessed you to do your own audiobook? And I say possessed because having looked into it, just the time it takes, and just the time, basically. I understand there's cost savings involved here, but
it actually wasn't terrible in terms of cost. So this is the microphone that I bought for that purpose. It's the one I'm using right now. It was $30 on Amazon. I just won with the right settings. I went and looked up online what the right ones for voice are, and it's a cheap one, nothing special. And I have a little soundproof cube over here that I pick up and I set right here so that it deadens the sounds of the house. I had to actually learn that. I did part of Mike's book and kept hearing all these mechanical noises, and shifting in the seat and all the rest of that. So that was another $30. So $60 in on that. And then I used free Audacity.
Nice.
I took the, what's the name of the Skillshare? I have a Skillshare subscription and I have it for a lot of reasons, but I just went and looked up how to make an audiobook, and there's a training course there, and I watched and listened, and thank you, Usman. Usman says it was a solid rendition. That was literally the first thing that I tried to do professionally. Half a book for Mike and then my own. So I appreciate the solid response there. But I just gave it a shot, and they showed me how to use the Audacity. It's free. And then $60 of books. And it took, I don't know, it probably took a month. But it took a month of about an hour, a couple of times a week of reading my book. And you have to kind of learn how to do it. Part of it is the start stop. You have to learn how to just stop when you make a little bobble and then start again and edit all the stuff back together. But I didn't have the money to do a $3,000 purchase for somebody else, and I didn't really trust the royalty share option. You get what you pay for, and so since I couldn't afford it with somebody else, and I have a voice, I obviously know how to use it a little bit, so I gave it a shot.
So I mean, the reading would be an issue. You would definitely pronounce everything correctly, which is a bonus. But I would think the editing would just be super time consuming. Even for this show, Mike and I have talked about, making a little, 30-second clip of, best bits or, bloopers or whatever. And so I downloaded half a dozen episodes and started going through one of them. And it's like, oh my freaking Lord. It's like, ain't nobody got time for this.
I didn't find it that hard. Well, one, I did take the Skillshare course. I can't remember who it was, but there's a bunch of them, and you can even get them on YouTube. You can just say, how do I record and how do I narrate a book? And you can get them in little pieces. But there are some tricks. You have to learn them. I mean, that's what I did this to learn how to do the publication. There are some tricks, but once you know how to do the pattern, and I've got a nice big screen here, so I put the visualization up real big. You can spot the bobbles real quick. I mean, when you have the big graphic, you can say, that's a mistake. And once you identify a normal tick, you can say anywhere you see this thing, just fix it in the whole document. I'd say the largest time-consuming piece was getting all the breaks right so that you could put them together. And then what I did is I'd go back and I'd look at each place where the sound came together. I would highlight it and listen to both sides. And so a pro tip is use a set of headphones, because you won't hear all of the little extra sounds. Like where we're listening, it sounds fine. And thank you, Usman, for saying that my first recording was fine. I happen to know it's kind of crap, but it's when you put on a good set of headphones, you hear things that you wouldn't hear otherwise. And so I actually recorded my book twice. So if you were one of the first people to hear the book, which Mike, you were one of the first people to hear the book, you heard it with all the mistakes. And I was on a long drive and I listened to it myself and I was like, oh, this is so embarrassing. there were so many mistakes. So then I redid the whole book and republished it.
Were there instances then that you found, did you find yourself as you were reading it kind of editing it as well and going back to the book and saying, I have to change this to make it flow better?
Okay, so here's also, I don't know if there's a pro tip for everybody, but in my own editing process. So I do a first draft, I get it written, and then I go back through the entire book or story if it's short, and I kind of clean up everything that I can see, and then I make a recording of myself. I read the book. I do a read aloud of my own editing, and I find all kinds of stuff. Every time, every story, as soon as I read it aloud, I'm like, oh, well, that doesn't work. And the thing that I'm looking for when I do that, I get compliments from people on dialogue. People, it's a regular enough comment that I'm not being an obnoxious twat about it. It's just
obnoxious
I
twat.
apparently can write a little bit of dialogue. And I guarantee you a huge part of that is that I read everything aloud. And if it doesn't flow off my tongue well, I sit down and I go, well, how would I say it? Yeah. And then I rewrite it. And then I read it out loud. And when I can read it without stumbling on it, then I think it's smooth.
I will tell you, the very last thing I do when I edit books is I do the immersion edit where I listen to it and I have it up on my screen and I watch, and same thing to find all the awkward things. I found I can only do that once per book or in a set amount of time, because otherwise I kind of hear what I want to hear.
Yeah. So, yeah, that does happen. And for anybody who's thinking that it's a big deal, I just use my iPhone. I set it on voice memo and I set it right there and I read, and it's right, and and then I play it back and I don't even always have to play it back. It's the act of reading it out loud that identifies the problems.
Maybe that's an old journalist editor kind of trick, that and reading stuff backwards to catch spelling errors, But reading it out loud is pretty important. And Mike, if you don't mind me saying, so, and that's a perfect way to say that, Mike started a lot of sentences with "so," right? Mm-hmm. Because people say it all the time. So, right, and when you say it all the time, it's fine. It kind of gets lost in the general noise. But when you see it, right, and then you start looking up a page, so, right, mm-hmm. That kind of thing. You just got to change it up. It's like, you don't want to start several sentences in a row with a person's name or the same word, whatever that is.
One of the things that you have to consider, and it took me a while to learn it, so all of your filler words, and this is criticism that I give to people that I beta for, all of your filler words are only right for people that are regionally like you. We say so. Someone else might say somebody else might say whatever, and they'll put in their own words if you don't write them. So almost all filler words can be just left out.
Yep.
And your reader's going to put in the filler word for you correctly for them.
Yeah.
Yep. I will say that this last pass, I will also, somebody, I don't know who, they said they go through and they do all the false starts to sentences like the so or the well. And they're like, okay, fine. I needed that when I was writing it to complete the thought. But now we just, delete. And you just get rid of the false starts to all your sentences. And then people just speak, it comes out much cleaner. So I
don't think you want to take them all out necessarily.
No.
I mean, there are some times, especially in your books, Mike, as a first person view, right? Sometimes people are just going to talk like that. And every now and then, you kind of leave those things in because it's kind of natural, right? It's fine.
One of the tricks for doing accents or colloquialisms, that kind of thing, is to be frugal in your use of them. And believe it or not, like just using ain't instead of a lot of other words or your or whatever, as long as you only pick one or two of them, people will fill in the rest of the accent for you and they won't be distracted by your writing. So if you were to write clear, the way that you write, just clearly everything correctly, and then for the character that's got a little bit of a hillbilly attitude, you gave him one or two words that are his and make all those correctly, it works. Hey, Timothy. And that really works well. One of the other things that I do, Ro, as you were pointing out, the filler words, is just read down the side of your page. And if you have a lot of repeating words of any kind, not just filler words, but I have a problem where everybody's looking and smiling.
Yeah. I do that as well. But that's like, well, that's what they're doing though. But anyway, I forget what one of my early books, I went through it and I saw a word that it was there a couple times. So I did a word search on it, and I had used that, whatever that word was, like 96 times in the book. And it's like, I think I took it down to 3. But yeah, it's one of those things. What the hell was I going to say? Bugger. Don't know. Doesn't matter. Couldn't have been that important.
So I tell you what, while you're both here, and I know that Mike likes his work in an hour. I think he must go have some cookies or something when it's in. I'll just do it. The book is right here, Heirs to a Flawed Creation. I really appreciate those of you who have read it. Those of you who haven't, it's a short collection of short stories. Most of them are consumable in 30 minutes to a couple hours, depending on which one you're reading. There is an audiobook. I love it when people read it. I would love your feedback, even if it's horrible. As a matter of fact,
genre is on that
just
book?
1 million people would read my book to tell me it's bad. I'd be all right with that.
Yeah, right. People bought my book and said, this sucks. Like, woo!
You could get 1 million people can buy my book every time to tell me it's awful. But it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy writing those stories. All of these characters that you're running into end out in longer works. So by the end of the summer, I'm going to release another collection of shorts. New for you guys, since you guys have me out here right now. It's Adrift in the Next Revolution will be the title. And it's going to be focused on the humans. So this book is focused on the lives of androids in near Earth just being near future in our solar system. It does attach to other parts of the world and the galaxy, but it's really focused on our solar system. I think they're pretty good. I've gotten some decent feedback from the people that are out there. So buy my book. I work with salespeople all the time, and I can tell you make exactly as many sales as you ask for. And so buy my book, buy Ranger's Deck, buy The World of Pertani. We would love you guys to get out there and hear our stories. So now that you got that little ad in there.
You say that, and it reminds me when I was going to school for my first master's, there was a guy in our class who is he's a money raiser, right?
Right.
He goes out and asks.
He's a fundraiser. Right.
Fundraiser. Thank you. Yeah. Anyway, he said what he learned really early on was you don't get what you don't ask for, right? And he was with this guy, and he sat down with him. And the guy says, I've got $10 million. How much of it do you want? And he was just like, $2 million. And the guy wrote him a freaking check for $2 million right there and handed it to him and said, I would have given you all 10 if you asked for it. And said from that point on, he always asks for whatever he thinks, if someone says that again, he will ask for all of it. Because, you just don't get it if you don't ask for it.
So in my regular life, the way that I make a living, I deal with a lot of salespeople, and I deal with a lot of negotiation. And there are a couple of truths. One, say what you want. Don't dicker with it. If you want somebody to read your book, say, please read my book. And I want you guys to read my book. Start with a short story. If you like that style, I got lots of it.
And I want you to leave a freaking review.
It is so hard to get reviews to inspire somebody enough that they want to say, hey, I did this thing. You should do it too.
I don't even care.
I did the thing. You don't want to do it. And if you're a writer and you're not leaving reviews for people that you've read their work, ooh, shame on you. Even one sentence that says, I read this book, it's good, it's bad, is gold. So that's one thing you learn. And the other thing that you learn is people will always ask for more until you say no.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to, the price on this is $1 million. Well, I can't do $1 million. I'd like 900,000. Fine. We'll do 900,000. And I want better terms. Well, fine. We'll give you terms. Can I pay late? You know, and just
Right.
They'll keep asking until you get to this is what I'm willing to do. So
John is taking
not
on the part of
your
EL.
phone. Oh,
John is taking your place, and his phone, he battered it, and now he's not on.
yeah, so John ran out of battery.
Strange.
We'll get him back. We'll get him back. So anyway, that's there. I really enjoyed it. A comment for these guys. This is they're kind of defunct now, but Zombie Pirate Publishing.
Mhm.
They gave me a chance. I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. They had a series, and I've published a bit with these guys. All short stories. It was lots of fun. This one's about space pirates, and then some horror stories that I wrote with them, and it was a lot of fun. And the reason I call that out is for any of you out there that do indie house publishing or small publishing, that do the anthologies, you guys are doing God's work, giving writers a chance to see that they can get out in the world and that it's okay for them to publish. And you have no idea how much of a difference it makes to a writer for somebody to say, yeah, yours is worthy. We'd like to include you. So for the small presses out there that make a space for people learning how to write, God bless you. Good work.
Hey, on another topic altogether. So when you actually get books out, I'll ask you this question, but I can ask it now. Do you go to like Comic-Cons and stuff like that just to wander around? As you don't.
I'm
have
still growing. It's in the list of things that I ought to do, would like to do, but I'm not there yet. I'm learning.
And where are you at, EL?
Dallas.
Oh,
yeah, you got great ones. I would suggest you go just to see what other authors and folks are doing as far as table setup and signage and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it really is. You'll save some money, first of all, doing things that you think would look cool that are just unnecessary.
That don't work and that aren't necessary.
Don't work. Right. It's just, especially if you're doing it all by yourself, it's just a lot of trash to have to plug in, set up, and take down, and blah, blah, blah. But and go talk to some of them and find out what they're doing, because the authors at a comic show will talk to you.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, like I said, I'm learning. I'm going to get them out there. As I described, I've got some finished novels that they'll come out soon. I have one that I've already got a cover for. So I think that one within the next year, I'll get it out there.
Are they a series?
Yeah. I've got, like I said, I've got 3 series that are epic in scope. They're huge. So lots and lots of space for storytelling. And then I also have standalone stuff that I write. So urban fantasy, fantasy, and science fiction. I've got series in each of those.
I
wrote a serial killer last year. It took me about 3 months, 100,000, lots of gory crap. It was rough.
You seem to excel at the gory stuff.
I write a little bit about people that die.
Yeah.
So you're on the list.
I made it through the first story driving to DC earlier this week on your thing. And after that first story, it's like, I don't know if I can listen to more of this, man. Drive my car off.
That was actually the hardest one. And so the first story, so those of you who read the collection, the first story is about an android assassin refinding his purpose. And totally, guys, this is something you guys, I empathize with. It's about an old robot refinding his purpose. It's an android. He's out there. They've taken away his purpose. It's like being Rift, and you got nothing to go with, and then you have a chance to go back and do what you do, and he felt joy in it. It just happened to be that what he did was murder people. But and he saved the baby. Get a little giveaway there.
He did.
He did save the baby, but and Ro, if you haven't read the rest of it, that wasn't the hardest one. The interview was probably the hardest one. But
Okay. Well,
did you read the interview? Did you read them all, Ro, or did you give up on me from my murdery?
I read that first one, or I had it. You read that first one to me while I was driving, and then I think I listened to a Wrexham podcast after that. I like it.
I like Wrexham. Wrexham's good fun. I think that except for the interview, the rest of them you'll be okay with.
Right.
The interview.
So
it's hard
with the stuff you've got in the can. Are you going to do like a Kickstarter or something? Because I mean, you have the opportunity to release an entire trilogy all at once, which is something that if we had patience, we would probably be wise to do. But
I haven't thought it through enough. I haven't thought it through enough. Although the three, you're gonna love this part. The 3 books that I have are three different trilogies because I can't keep my mind straight. Now one of those.
You don't have
one of those is 300,000 words, so I might be able to break it up.
It's the steel cone called the middle.
Well, it was 300,000 words because it's global in scope and it's told from 2 primary points of view with 3 or 4 points of view that go underneath each one of them, and they're coming together. So I could either break that one. I think I can break that one into 2 and just tell them as separate stories. What I've thought about doing with that one, and that's the Seed of Temra for those of you who are interested, and the thread that holds the whole series together. Okay, John. The thread that holds them all together is Eldred and Ghent. And it's actually a story of a father's love. There's lots of murder and sex and death and all the rest of that stuff in it, but it really is the story of Ghent, who is the child of a wizard, his father watching after him and all the stuff he would do to take care of his son, which involves a lot of kind of heinous stuff.
Father's love like murder, sex, and death.
Nothing like murder, sex, and death. But it's globe spanning, and he has an antagonist, which is a warlord who's been taking over the world. So they come to a head, the wizard and the warlord, in the end, and it's what happens inside of that. And in that story, so it's the origins of both of them. It's the birth of Ghent and the destruction of the world from the other side as they come crashing together.
Ro, I hope that your daughter just happens to watch a little bit of this show and she picks up the father's love, murder, sex, and death is the one line she gets completely out of context.
If she watched this show, she certainly isn't going to make it to minute 58. Hey, my last question here. I've got a bolt.
Yeah, I got you.
How many podcasts and things do you listen to? Because you are here every time we're here, and we love you for that. Don't get me wrong. And everybody else is here all the time. Thank you very much.
You might get honorary favorite Canadian status.
That's right.
Oh, you're going to turn me into a Canuck. Well, I do like the snow and I love the mountains. So the answer to your question is this is my workstation. I work right here. You can see that I've got 2 work computers sitting right here. I've got my home computer right there. I work constantly. I work from 7 or 7:30 in the morning till, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, that's just wrong. Stop that.
And I've got a television over here, so I run podcasts on that while I work.
All right,
and since I'll have 3 computers running. You guys are right here. I just have to push the laptops apart and type and then put them back together and keep working. So
I'm curious. I know I said it was my last question. This is my last question. How did you find this show? Because Mike and I were just screaming into the abyss for like the first month or 2.
Beard of Darkness. So okay, so here's a true story.
Matt is the man.
I decided they're all true stories. Okay, I decided that I was going to publish. So how can you sit on 7 novels and not have published them? Part of it is work. I do write a lot of mobsters and prostitutes, no doubt. And at my prior employment, I had a contract where anything I wrote, they owned. So I didn't want to publish anything because if I was any good at it, they'd own it. Under my new contract, I signed I put an addendum into the contract that said they only own nonfiction. So as long as it's fiction, I own it. So I could publish. And then I decided I was going to publish. And I had watched, like I said, I watched podcasts. I watched lots of BookTube stuff. And Daniel Green said, if you really want to get to my attention, you need the small broadcasters to say, when there's chatter with the smaller booktubers that says this is a book you ought to listen to, that's how you get their attention. And so I went looking for podcasts that had very low subscribership. And I found Beard of Darkness when I think he'd published like 10 videos. It was in his first month or two. And so I thought, and I watched them all, and they were all on topics that I thought were cool. So I said, well, this is a guy I'd like to get to know. And so I started with him. And then from him, the people that showed up and talked about similar stuff, I started following around them, and I found Mike. So I followed Mike from Beard of Darkness. And then I was like, oh, well, let's listen to his show. Let's look at his book. And then I found you. And so for all of you in the comments and your other authors and stuff, this is how I found you. I got in here, and then I got on Twitter, got into the community, and as is true of everything, you get in what you put in, or you get out what you put in. And so became an active part of the community and started, I make an effort. I make an effort at least once a month or so to see some of the names that I'm not familiar with and go see what they're doing and find out if it's familiar. So I am on an active hunt all the time for new people in the market, smaller contributors. And if they're doing stuff that I think is cool, I put them in the rotation and comment. And
nice. And
honestly, I sent out, Usman, I had never heard of until he showed up on one of the shows. So that's Bards and Books, who's been here today. I found him. I sent him a copy of my book. I learned about Tori Tekken. I learned about Kay's Hidden Shelf, Darko, the Britain, who's some Okie dude, and that's how it was. I went looking for them, and there's a bunch. There's a big variety of booktubers out there that are doing just a little bit. And as long as there's that many out there, you can find people that are into your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. When you get your book published, come on back, definitely. But I want to say, like and subscribe for anybody else out here. You guys can keep chatting, whatever you need to do. EL, it was a treat meeting you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on.
Face with a name. Mike, I'll talk at you later.
Okay, let's talk Janeway now.
All right.
Oh, yes. I did miss my my Captain Janeway shirt. I thought about it just for you.
That's all right. I don't look.
I was going to get a little heart with Captain Janeway and Ernest Hemingway on it together,
It's not that I hate Janeway, right? It's just
I have exactly zero skin in this game.
Voyager, right? And
it's just
I was driving down the road yesterday, and Andrew said Cisco first. Thank you. Right? Is it so hard? Then he said Janeway. He really liked Janeway, and that made me just want to puke. But that's all right. I don't dislike Janeway. I just don't really like Voyager. not when compared to all the other stuff, right?
Ro,
Okay.
Ro,
Yes.
the joy of bringing up Janeway is that your first reaction is, we say Captain Janeway, and Ro goes, something right here.
I don't know what it is. The show just never really connected with me because there was just so many times I'm like, there's a fucking wormhole. Go home. We can't go home because whatever. Just anyway, I'm gone. You don't want to hear this again. Take it easy, guys. Cheers.
We'll talk to you later, guys. Thanks. Okay, Mike. More for you and me. I didn't even let you ask your weird questions.
Yeah, I don't know if I should do sci-fi or fantasy, so
Do them both.
or if I should put you in the Bald Dome and have you have one of your characters.
You pick it. You pick it.
Okay. We are going to do fantasy because I think those questions are better.
Okay.
So you have to pick a fantasy character that you've written. Actually, no, we're not going to do. We're just going to do this. Let me roll my die. We'll just give you a random question.
Okay, random questions.
2. Pick one. A week at your day job or a week spent on adventure with your main character.
Oh, adventure with my main character. I might not live, but it'd be fun.
That was a follow-up question. Yeah, because you'd have all kinds of hookers and mobsters.
Yeah, you pretty much have it that if it didn't kill me in the process, my wife would kill me when I got home.
Ooh. So when do you have a publishing schedule? I know you said it's 7 books and you're going to have one out by the end of this year.
So I have selected about 45 short stories that I can bundle together into collections and publish. As I said, I'm learning about the publishing process, and what I thought was I would put out a science fiction collection, a fantasy collection, and a urban fantasy collection, and kind of see what works. See if anybody jives on what I'm writing. Who knows? Maybe they'll get excited about everything, and then I would pick one of the novels in those series to be the first novel to go out. So I have right now, as I said, I've got almost the whole collection of the human stories for Near Earth put together. I think I can probably get that one out in, let's call it July, maybe August. But I've already ordered the art for it. Same guy that did this one, because I kind of think they ought to work together. And I've given him several stories. So for my artist, the artist that did this book is Felipe Braccioli. He's a guy out of Portugal. And the way that I did the book with him is I provided him several short stories and said, find inspiration. Let me see what you like. And he gravitated towards Brother Mind for that one. And it was surprising because it wasn't exactly what I expected. But once it came together, I really liked the cover. I think it worked out. So I'm going to let him do the same thing with the next series. And he's got a series of stories and he's working on it right now. I actually expect to see sketches maybe Saturday. And then after that, I'm either going to release a collection of fantasy or horror. And what I'm doing is I wrote a novel. I put together the collection that you have in your hand. Yeah. Then I edited a novel and I put together another collection. And then I think I'm going to write another novel between these two. So I'll do that collection. I'll write a novel and then I'll put together another collection and then I'll write another novel. It takes about 3 months to write. The 300,000 took me 8 months, but I also put together a collection in the middle. So probably 6 months for the 300K.
So you are writing pretty fast. 100,000.
Yeah, I can sit down. I can write 1,000 words with no trouble, and I can write 2,000 words pretty consistently. and every now and then I'll sit down and write 5.
So if you're did 300,000 in 6 months, that means you're doing a NaNoWriMo every month.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Yeah, exactly, Timothy. I boggles the mind. But
well, that's first draft. I mean, you can't really say that you wrote the book when you did a first draft. You have to write it, and then you have to rewrite it, and then you have to edit it. So I've always thought it was a little facetious to say that you could write a book in a month. You can write a draft in a month.
So I was just going to tell you, when I published my first book, I was the opposite of you. I was like, I don't know if it's any good or not. If it's terrible, no one will read it and no one will know. So publish.
You probably learned a lot from that too.
Now that I've published 4 books, I am finally going to send out ARCs and reader copies. The first 3 were all I sent it up to Amazon and then called my brother and said, "Can you see it on Amazon?" And I doubled the number of people on the planet who knew that it was out. So I'm trying to go for better than doubling on release day now.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's good. And the truth is, I know how to write. I don't know anything about how to get the book out there very well. Publishing, and I'm learning. But I expected 10 people. That was my goal. I thought when I put this out, 10 people will see it and maybe somebody will say something nice. And I think right now it's about 25, 30 have read the collection, and I've gotten, I've got 5 reviews on Goodreads, and I got 4 on Amazon, and they're all very positive. And I've actually gotten feedback outside of published reviews that was good, but they didn't do a review. What's up with that? Anyway, so it's been fun. It's been fun, and hopefully I can do a little bit more. And again, buy my book, increase that number.
There you go. I was one of the people who gave you a 5-star review, and that was an easy 5-star for me to give. I really did love it.
I was tickled. When you called back and you're like, "Ed, dang it. Now you have to tell me the rest of the story."
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's an enthusiastic feedback.
Yeah. So yeah, I am looking forward to it. I don't know. I think I'm going to like the androids better than the humans because androids are new and novel.
Androids are new and novel. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, but you never know. I'll have to read it and find out now, won't I?
If you were to listen to my mother, she says I have more to say about androids than I have to say about other stuff. So we'll see.
So, well, I have to get to editing because I have to finish editing this book by the end of the weekend. So I got my work cut out for me.
Awesome. So for everybody who came, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate everybody who's given me any attention and all the nice people out there. The writer community is just really good stuff. Plug your show for tomorrow.
We do not have a show tomorrow. We have a show next week that I am unprepared to tell people who it is. Give me just a second.
No, that's all right. So while he's doing that, you're going to like, you're going to share, you're going to subscribe. You're going to share with everybody because this was me and I'm entertaining. I certainly didn't make them work very hard for the interview.
No, you really didn't. So let's see. On Tuesday, we are going to be talking with G.J. Terrell, who is now a member of the Secret Scribes, which is the next group after the break-ins.
All right. And when's your next book?
My next book is The Haley Traveler. It is on pre-order now, coming out July 26th, although that may change. I want to get it out in time to be in Spacebo. So
it's on pre-order now.
It is on pre-order now.
You haven't told anybody that.
That's because I haven't even released the cover yet, because I want to release the cover. That's also on my list of things to get done. And then, yeah.
Okay. So he's got a book that you could pre-order. When is Rose's next book coming out?
That is a very good question.
God, what kind of a partner are you? All right. So look for mine look for it in July, but it might be August. It'll be a good, fun collection. I promise people will die. There will be robots. There will be people. There will be at least one prostitute. It's guaranteed mobsters, prostitute, murder, some thriller, and some excitement. So if you've enjoyed what I did, I've got more for you. Got it in droves. It's been fun.
Yep. And next week, once I'm done with my editing, I will get the cover reveal out and I will let the whole world know that it's coming. But I feel anxious talking about it before it's done. So,
buy
yeah,
Mike's books, buy Rose books. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for asking questions.
And heckle EL for not having published more yet.
Well, beware. Ask and ye shall receive.
So, okay. I think we'll end it there.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, everybody.